you're here before me. Excuse me, let me push past you. There. How you doing? This is another episode of the Lockdown Landy restoration, where I've got a 1973 Series 3 long wheelbase station wagon that I'm giving some tender loving care to during the time where we can't get out and about. I'm almost at the stage of putting it back together, and it's nice to be doing some of the finishing off jobs. One of the things I've got to do is give the radiator a bit of a tidy up. I'm very lucky that I managed to get a new second-hand radiator for this project from someone right here in the village. Quite some years ago, he had converted his petrol Land Rover to a diesel Nissan motor, a 6-cylinder, and he felt it needed a bigger radiator. So the radiator and a few other parts that were not needed for the Landy got pushed up into the rafters of the barn and have been there for the last 30 years. This radiator was part of that haul. It's done very low mileage. It's quite original. The only problem with it really was that when it was up on the shelf it was laid flat. Somebody saw a flat space and thought they'd push a box up on top of it. They did that and they scuffed the fins on its face. A few days ago I smoothed all those fins out, so that job's already been done. But what we're going to do now is attend to the rust and daggy paint around the tanks and the side brackets. Come and have a look. As you can see, the area that has damaged paint is where the fins were all bent over. I've just spent 15 minutes with a screwdriver just gently pushing those fins back into place. So what I'm going to be doing now is tidying up this rust that's around the frame, sanding down the top and bottom tanks, and repainting the whole thing. Right, some of the tools that I'll be using on a job like this, in order of their use, will be, for preliminary cleaning, I'll be using my small angle grinder with a wire brush on it. You'll see that it's halfway through its life. It was a tufted wire brush, and they're the stronger, more durable type. They'll last longer, they'll rip off heavier rust. And then after I've gone over the worst of the rust with that, I'll move on to this over here. This is a 3M stripping wheel, and they are perfect for removing paint and light rust. If you use them on heavy rust, you'll destroy them. They're a little bit expensive, but they're extremely good if used properly. For cleaning right down and giving a polished finish to metal, I'll use a flap disc. This is a 60 grit flap disc. They last for quite a few days in normal workshop use. And here, this is not sandpaper. This is emery cloth. It's cloth backed sandpaper, and it lasts much, much longer. Once I've prepared all these rusty bits, I'll be moving on to hitting it with the CRC rust converter. I mentioned this in a video a few weeks ago. It's a new formula. The new formula is a huge improvement. The last stuff was water-based. This is spirit-based. It gets in deeper and it works faster. I love it. After that, I'll be using the zinc blaster to blow paint inside these crevices that I can't get to normally. They'll need protection, but I can't get in there to rub them down because the core is hard up against the frame, but the frame being steel will rust. So the zinc blaster is a new product that they've put out that has extra pressure in the can and a different design nozzle, and it simply pushes the product further into crevices. Great for hard to reach places. I can't wait to try it. I'm going around the radiator, section by section, side by side with the wire buff, just cleaning off all of the heavy rusting and the paint, you'll see that I can get it down to a reasonably good finish just with the wire brush compared to the ferrous metals of what we started with here and the copper of the bottom tank. I am having to be very, very careful doing these flanges along the top here that I don't get anywhere near the fins, because I've now got those in a lovely condition. I don't want to risk damaging them. Oh, my heart was in my mouth doing that last bit. Inside here, working so close to the core with one of those is like Russian roulette. Has anybody here ever used a floor polisher? One of those big lino scrubbers that they use in supermarkets and hallways and hospitals? Those things are insane if they get away on you, and an angle grinder is just the same with a wire buff on it, except when it digs in, bang! It's gone. It flies out of your hand, it ties itself in a knot in your jersey, or it destroys whatever you're working on. So that's over. The preliminary work is done. Now I'm going to get that emery cloth and I'll just get into the corners where you can't get with a rotary tool. There's always the crescent in the corner that you can't get to. So I'll clean those pieces out and then we're going to hit it with the CRC rust converter. What I would do now, after hitting it with the wire brush and then the emery paper to get into the corners, I would then either use the 3M disc cleaner to get in to these pieces and around here, but it's a little hard on the brass tanks, so I don't like using that. Unfortunately, both my wire brushes are on their last legs, but they will do this job, because really all I want to do is scrape off any loose or flaking paint and the copper sulfate that the radiator water has reacted with and created this green oxide. We'll just scrape that off, and then we're going to be ready to hit it with that new improved CRC rust converter. Right, next thing is, because this is an agricultural vehicle, even though it's been up in the rafters for the last 25 or 35 years, I'm going to blow out the core, because I want to give the thing a good paint job and I don't want to be painting grass seeds and dead bees. As you can see, there is stuff coming out from inside. Right. Now, radiators are multi-cored. Big heavy vehicles that do a lot of towing and a lot of slow off-road work could have up to a 4 or 5 core radiator stacked like this. Modern cars, they only have a single core or a 2 core radiator. But because this is a multi-matrix of tubes and fins, there's the good chance of things getting trapped in there. You can see that even though this thing's been off the road for such a long time, there's still stuff in there that needed to be got out. And what I did was I blew it from the engine side back out towards the front from where it came. Now it's clean and dust free, we're ready to use this stuff. It says on the can that you should shake it for 2 minutes, but honestly that is the can from the old formulation. The old formulation was a water emulsion, and the active ingredient is still the same. It's, I believe, tannic acid. So this has a spirit base, and all we're going to do is blow this down the seams around here because I can't get in there to kill the rust. This is the only way that I can do it because the core is so easily damaged. We can't sandblast or use any other system. But we'll blow this down inside all the way around. It has absolutely zero effect on aluminium, copper, brass or stainless steel, so you can use it pretty much anywhere you like. It works really fast. The old formula used to take up to an hour. It's all over with this stuff in about 15 minutes and it's ready to paint. You'll see these areas of pitted rust. It's not heavy pitting, but it is there. I've knocked off the scale rust, then we're down to the dusty rust, which you can get with the sandpaper. This is the pitted rust that's left over, and this stuff will deal to it. I'm going inside for a cup of tea. I'll come back in 15 minutes and show you how that's reacted on the rust. Okay, so it's now a cup of tea and 2 shortbread later, and I'm back out here looking at what the rust converter's done, and as you can see it has converted rust. All of these black areas were the areas that were originally the pitted rust, and they've now been converted, and that provides a stable base for the zinc rich primer to go over it. And that zinc rich primer I'm using, it's a new product that they've put into a high pressure can with a different nozzle to squirt into awkward places, so I'm keen to see it. Now, something I've just learned about this range of products is these labels at the bottom, the factor 65 corrosion protection. I didn't know whether that was 65% of something or 65 out of 100 or what, because this one is a factor 36 protection. I've done a bit of delving. I called the CRC helpline and they told me that it has 65 months protection, and this one has 36 months protection in outside in rough conditions. So let's try this stuff out and just see what a zinc blaster does. Oh god, yeah, I can. Oh yeah. You can probably hear that. It's at a much higher pressure than spray cans normally are. Bloody hell. Okay. I'm going to spray this under each of the 4 pieces that are very difficult for me to get to, and I'm going to spray quite liberally to give it some good corrosion protection in there. There's one side. I tell you what, this would be awesome on boat trailers. For doing boat trailer repairs on the galvanizing. It would really get in places. There we go. I'll save that for another important job. But I'm going to paint the rest of it with black zinc. The zinc won't affect the brass at all. The brass and the copper don't need this zinc protection, but the side plates and these shroud brackets around the outside mild steel, and they'll benefit from a good coat of this. It dries to a nice satin black, which is good for radiators. And whenever I'm painting anything, I always paint the awkward parts first. That way you don't have to pick it up and handle it or move it later. Get under all the edges and lips. Nice, even, steady coats, releasing at the end, because if you don't, you'll end up with a build up at the ends. I'm going to leave this overnight so that this side can dry thoroughly, and I'll come back in the morning and paint the other side. Thanks for the magic of video. It's now the next morning. Everything's bone dry, and we'll just flip it over, do the other side, and we can call the job done. Once again, paint all the difficult bits first. I like to go around the edges and under the folds first, because then when I start painting the outside, as I am now, those pieces tend to get two coats rather than one, and it just makes sure that rust's not going to start in the crevices and folds, because they have just a little extra paint on them. Right, filling in the middle. Like I say, release the button at the end of each stroke so that you don't get a build-up. That's just habit from years and years of using spray bombs to attempt full car paint jobs. It is possible. I dip the can into hot water, which thins the paint and increases the pressure inside the can. Gives you a good squirt. I'm only momentarily releasing the button at the end of each stroke. It's a very subtle thing, but on a large flat panel it does make a difference. It stops the build-up and the risk of runs. I'm really pleased with that, actually. Now, why are radiators always black? When we all know that it's lighter colours that reflect heat, I would have thought that radiators would be better if they were shiny. But those who supposedly know more about physics than I do tell me that black works because it attracts the heat. And I'm thinking, what? But they say it attracts the heat from the inside and dissipates it to the outside. I don't like to argue with people, but that's one thing that I've never quite got my head around. There we go. Job done.